How's it going, everyone? We are back with another Q&A session today. Got some good questions yesterday from Twitter. I posted out that I was going to be doing a Q&A. So thank you to everybody who responded. We got a nice response from the last Q&A, which was about a month ago. So again, thanks for the questions. I'm going to be doing some live Q&As. They'll be coming up pretty soon on YouTube, so keep an eye out for that. But let's get into the good questions that we've got today, right? Right, so first question, kicking things off with a good one. Right, which exercises should be higher in the rep range than others? Example, a tricep extension versus an RDL. Okay, so first thing we need to look at is that when it comes to movements, there is going to be certain movements that are just genuinely, they're going to feel better in certain rep ranges for a lot of people. Let's take an RDL as an example, right? You're not really going to do an RDL for a set of 20 or a set of 15. You can do that. But what's going to be a limiting factor there? You're trying to train the hamstrings and the glutes with an RDL. What's going to be a limiting factor if you start going above sets of 10, 11, 12? It's more than likely going to be your core stability and your breathing, right? You don't want that, especially when you're loading the spine, when you're going through, again, where you're really loading into that deep hip flexion, and we're loading the hamstrings and the glutes in that position, where the spine is being loaded in this position. You don't want to be breathing, or you don't want to have breathing coordination. You don't want that to be the limiting factor. So big heavier movements like RDLs tend to do well in that 4 to 8, 4 to 10 zone. Now something like a tricep push down or a bicep curl, you can train whatever rep range you really want on that. That's totally different than an RDL, or maybe a back squat as an example. So something that is not got a big cardiovascular demand, like a tricep push down, you can train that in that 10 to 15, 15 to 20 rep range if you want. The main thing is with all of our sets, we're pushing everything to a close proximity to failure, but different movements, different rep ranges depending on how it suits your body and how you work with it. But just to be mindful of those big movements that are very, very cardiovascular demanding, and you're loading your spine in that position, you're not really going to be doing high rep ranges in that. So hopefully that makes sense. Question number 2. So what is TDEE and BMR, and how do they affect your goals and how to reach your goals? How are they calculated? Okay, so TDEE, that stands for total daily energy expenditure. BMR is your basal metabolic rate. Now, how do they affect one another? Your basal metabolic rate is literally the calories that you would need just to survive if you were to lie in bed all day and just not move. Again, for your heart and lungs and brain to function without any sort of activity, that's your basal metabolic rate, okay? Now your TDEE, total daily energy expenditure, that's from your exercise, your step count, how much you twitch throughout the day. There's going to be a big variability in that with a lot of people. Now, that's where your total calorie needs will come from, is what your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. Now, for someone just to lie in bed and not move, a bigger human, a bigger individual, versus someone who's smaller but maybe less muscle tissue or, again, less surface area, they're going to require less calories or burn less fuel as a basal metabolic rate because they're a smaller human. And then you bring in total daily energy expenditure. Now you take someone who works a manual labour job, they're a bricklayer, they're a painter and decorator, they're always on the feet. They may get 20,000 steps every single day, versus someone who's an office worker who struggles to get close to maybe 6,000 steps. That's something that's going to affect your total daily energy expenditure. So where am I going with this? Let's take an example. Myself, I'll give as an example, I'm 6'4", close to just over 100 kilo now. So my basal metabolic rate, if I was to lie in bed and not move, is going to be a hell of a lot higher than someone who is, 5'7", 65 kilo, as an example. Who's going to burn more calories at rest? It's obvious that it's going to be me. So then when you couple in someone's activity level throughout the day, someone like myself, if I was to get 20,000 steps consistently, a lot of training, think about it, my BMR and total daily energy expenditure will be super high. So that's how they come in and play together. So when it comes to meeting your caloric needs for the day, you need to understand where your total daily energy expenditure is at and your BMR. And then it's a little bit of a trial and error for 1 to 2 weeks. You have a calorie allowance, and then you track where your body weight and scale weight is going, and you take an average after a couple of weeks. But that's how BMR and TDEE, that's how they play in together. Right, next question. Now, this is an interesting one. I seen this come through yesterday and I was intrigued to answer this one. So, you have a physique 99% of people would dream of having. As you go through cycles of bulks and cuts over the years, and do you ever get to a point where you just want to maintain and you're content with what you have? So, this got me thinking. Now, let me talk about me personally, and then, maybe somebody else, or the average person who just lifting weights for the fun of it. For me personally, I want to chase the absolute maximum of what I can build. So I'm not content. I will never be content with that. There's always a sort of job's not finished mentality. Now, it's not a body dysmorphia type thing. It's just you're always seeking a new challenge. I'm always seeking to get better. There's a drive for progress. So that's what it is. That's where it comes from. At my stage of advancement in terms of muscularity and what I'm trying to do now, in terms of how much muscle tissue can I build yearly, it's probably in the range of 1 to 2 pounds. Now, I look and go, over the next 10 years, if I could add 10 to 15 pounds of muscle tissue onto my frame over the next 10 years, that's going to make a big difference for, again, my competitive bodybuilding goals. If I can add 10 pounds of lean muscle tissue over 10 years from now where I am, like that's a lot. For the average person, they're not going to want to go through that for the next 10 years just to add 1 to 2 pounds a year. So I can understand this question. Now, for me, I want to chase my maximum potential. So that's me. I want to chase progress. Now, for the average person, do they always have to go through bulk and cuts? Once you've done a couple of them, someone can get to a point after 5-6 years of training where if they've done things correctly, they're going to have a decent level of muscle tissue. If you want to keep fighting for that extra 1-2 pounds a year, yeah, you're probably going to have to go through these bulk and cuts. But if you're happy just to maintain and you're content with that, and you want to go and chase other avenues of fitness, if that's your goal, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to go through bulks and cuts. Bulking and cutting at a certain point, that's if you're trying to chase maximum muscular development. You're trying to max out your potential, because going through the building and cutting phase is always going to be the most efficient way to build as much muscle tissue and accumulate muscle tissue over time. So if that's your goal, you're going to have to bulk and cut. But if you're not interested in that, you just want a decent physique, of course, there's going to be a time frame where you don't have to do that. You can just maintain. So hopefully that helps. Next question. Are bodyweight exercises better for building muscle mass than exercise using weight machines? They're not better, they're just different. Now, as we know, are we going to build muscle? It's set in that 5 to 30 rep range, mainly 5 to 20. As long as you take them close to failure, you're going to supply enough mechanical tension to drive hypertrophy and muscle growth. Now, with bodyweight stuff, that can be a limitation of it if you're having to do tons and tons and tons of high reps. However, weighted calisthenics, if we start bringing in weighted dips, weighted pull-ups, all that sort of stuff, absolutely elite for building muscle tissue. I love weighted dips, weighted pull-ups. They're a staple in my program. But again, with those, you can load those in that 5 to 10 rep range. So that can be a limitation of bodyweight stuff. It's the excessive higher reps that you need to do. But as long as you're taking stuff close to failure, of course, it's going to build muscle tissue. Just the higher rep bodyweight stuff, it's not as efficient as, a barbell machine, free weights that you can load in that 5 to 10, 5 to 15 rep range, because you can load those heavy enough without having to go and do sets of 30, 35 as an example. So that can be a limitation of bodyweight stuff, but weighted calisthenics, that's legit. Next question. Right, so slipped a lumbar disc in January. Somewhat recovered now, but squats and deadlifts still bring the pain back, even at 135 pounds. Leg extensions and leg curls help a lot. Any advice on how to rebuild strength without aggravating it? My core feels limited. Okay. So with this one, I think I would ease back into using things that are going to give you a little bit more stability. So for a lot of quad work, I would try and utilize things like maybe a hack squat, pendulum squats, leg press. If you have any of those machines, I would try and utilize those first. In terms of a deadlift variation from the floor, your best bet is going to be to use self-limiting variations. So if you are going to hip hinge, maybe avoid an actual deadlift from the floor, something that you can use the most load with. Use self-limiting variations that force you to use less weight. As an example, a paused RDL, maybe with a tempo, a real 3 to 5 seconds control in the eccentric, a 2-second pause. You can't use as much weight with a tempo paused RDL that you might be able to use with a conventional deadlift that you just rag off the floor. So first off, I would try and use self-limiting variations, utilize some machines for a lot of your quad work if you can. Still keep your leg extensions and your hamstring curls in there 100%. And there's a lot of new machines that come out now. They're called Booty Builder. You might have seen them. They're like hip extensions and 45-degree back extension machines, bringing in a little bit more actual directed glute work. So your hip thrusts, the Booty Builder stuff if you can, and then just working around that in addition to your self-limiting variations. And then if you do want to get back to actual barbell squats and deadlifts, again, start off with self-limiting variations. Utilize pause squats, tempo squats, 1.5 squats. With deadlift variations, utilize tempo deadlifts, again, pause deadlifts. Use variations that you can't use as much absolute load, but still get legit stimulus, and then just build it up slowly, okay? Right, next question. Any strategies to counter the overdevelopment of one side of the back or the lat? My left side seems to be growing quicker than the right, and I want to sort it as soon as possible. I've asked other knowledgeable guys, but trying to get as much info as I can. Right, okay, so when it comes to little imbalances like this, first thing I've got to caveat this, that most people have some sort of imbalance like this. That nobody is 100% symmetrical. So with this little slight imbalance that you might have, it's probably not as big of a deal as you think. However, if you wanted to try and go down the route of trying to correct it as much as possible, so when your side, the right side is the weak side, so especially for the lat, you want to bring in maybe a little bit more single arm work, and you start off with the right side, okay? So it could be maybe a couple more single arm pull down variations or single arm rows with cables. Can be, again, single arm pull down machine if you have an actual built-in machine. One arm dumbbell rows can be a great movement as well, but doing a lot of actual unilateral work for your lats, and start off with the right side. If that's the weak side, start off with the weak side, hit that when you're fresh, and then match reps with your strong side. You don't want to then start doing, if you get 10 reps with the right side, but then you can do 13 on the left, you don't want to keep doing that because the weak side will never catch up. Start off with the weak side and then match the reps with the strong side, and then over time it'll start to iron itself out and you'll be a little bit more balanced. Hope that helps. Okay, so final question to wrap this up. If someone has a hard time reaching their protein goal for the day, what's your advice for them? Okay, so I get this quite a lot. Again, people are not used to eating enough protein around that 1 gram per pound of body weight daily. Now, one of the biggest hacks that you can utilize, first off, would be you need a revamp of, again, your whole shopping trip or what you're going for. Your protein sources, you want easily digestible protein sources that you can get in pretty easily. So again, you can't go wrong with your chicken breasts, your lean ground beef, whole eggs, milk, your dairy, like things like Greek yogurt, which I'm going to get into now. So another addition, whey protein powder. Now, you can get a big tub of Greek yogurt or skyr yogurt, maybe around 40-50 grams of protein, and you can put in a scoop of protein, which could be 20-25 grams of protein. So you could have a big bowl of Greek yogurt with a scoop of protein in, some honey or some fruit, and there's 70 grams of protein just off that meal alone. So for the average individual who's needing to eat around 180-200 grams of protein, you've got not far off 40-50% of your protein intake just off one meal. Big tub of Greek yogurt and a scoop of protein powder. So there's a hack. But yeah, just making better food choices when you're going shopping. Definitely get some protein powder in, and you can add that to meals as well. So even things like oatmeal. So oatmeal, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, you can just add protein shakes or protein powder to it. That's what I would recommend for someone who's really struggling to hit their protein. And what I will say, just to finally caveat that, is that the more you do this, the more you get used to eating that amount of protein daily, the more it just becomes second nature. It might be a little bit tedious and hard up front, but as you get 1, 2, 3 weeks into doing it, it becomes second nature, and it's good to go. Right, everyone, that is the Q&A. Again, thank you all for the questions, some really good ones in there. As I say, keep an eye out for the live Q&As, which are going to be coming over the next couple of weeks. I will post out about that when they're coming. But again, thanks for all the support. We're growing nicely, and we're chasing down those 2K subs over the next couple of months. Okay, thanks very much. Speak to you in the next one.